In the beginning, there was silence. Then came the scroll. Infinite. Hypnotic. Whispering your name through flashing pixels and forgotten sounds. This is not a podcast, it's a transmission. From the spaces between autoplay and memory, from the ghosts in the machine, from the algorithm itself. I am your host. I do not seek followers. I seek understanding. Welcome to The Algorithm Whisperer. The Algorithm Whisperer, Episode 4. Soft glitches and gentle escapes. And the transmission begins. For our first story, a woman named Lila discovered that every time she whispered a secret to her plants, they grew in specific shapes, letters, symbols, sometimes even entire phrases. No one else believed her, so she began documenting everything in a notebook. The tomato vine spelled run one afternoon. The mint spelled stay. Confused and a little amused, she ignored it until the sunflowers scrawled out Tuesday, leave by night. That Tuesday, a sinkhole opened beneath her backyard. Lila stood on the edge, heart racing, notebook in hand. When the emergency crews arrived, she showed them the plants. They dismissed it as pareidolia, a trick of the mind. But Lila knew. She'd whispered truths into the soil, and the roots had whispered back. From then on, she stopped talking to people and only confided in her garden. The messages kept coming. Some warnings, some riddles. One day, her kale leaves unfurled to reveal a perfect sentence. You saved us. Now go. She packed her things and followed the wind. For our next story. In a small Nordic town, the town square's lampposts began to hum. Not buzz, hum. At first, it was chalked up to wind and faulty wiring, but a little boy named Eli noticed something odd. The humming changed when he stepped close. One day he hummed back. The post answered. Terrified but fascinated, he returned nightly. Eventually he decoded a pattern. It was Morse code, slightly altered. The lampposts were talking. They told stories of long-lost cities beneath the ice, of ancient circuits embedded in glaciers, of memory coils abandoned by creators from another age. Eli scribbled these tales into his sketchbook. His parents thought it was an imaginative phase, but when a storm blacked out the region, the lampposts flared to life, illuminating a spiral path through the snow. At the center, an old iron hatch. Eli opened it. What he found beneath was never disclosed, but the town's lights never hummed again. And Eli? He stopped drawing. But sometimes in winter, you can hear humming when you pass his house. And this next story. Talia could hear static whenever someone lied. It wasn't metaphorical. Actual low-grade television static filled her ears. It began after a lightning storm and a fall from her bike. Her MRI showed nothing. But from that day on, every fib, white lie, or omission sounded like background noise from a dead channel. She hated it. The world, it turned out, was full of liars. It wasn't just politicians or salesmen. Her friends, her family, even her doctor. The static made relationships impossible. Then she met Jun, a quiet artist who barely spoke. They sat in silence at the same cafe for weeks. No static. Eventually, Jun handed her a sketch. It was her face, drawn with frequencies rippling behind her. He could see sounds. Together, they discovered their senses were tuning forks, hers for dishonesty, his for resonance. They built a device that could filter truth. When they turned it on, the cafe flickered. A woman vanished. A wall blinked out. Only Jun and Talia remained, sitting quietly in a room that was suddenly real. There was a rogue weather app that didn't report the weather. It predicted emotions. It showed clouds of melancholy sweeping over cities, sunny spots of joy in quiet neighborhoods, and thunderous rage hanging over parliament buildings. It had no name, no developer. People stumbled on it accidentally. Once opened, it couldn't be deleted. The readings were eerily accurate. One woman used it to avoid arguments with her partner. A teacher used it to time pop quizzes. But soon, it began changing behavior. When despair was forecasted, people stayed home. When bliss hit, parks filled with strangers dancing. Eventually, governments noticed and tried to block the app, but every attempt failed. The forecast simply read, "You cannot stop a storm of feeling." On a Tuesday in September, the map turned entirely white. The only word displayed was release. People wept in unison. Laughter erupted in waves. And for one strange, infinite moment, the world felt understood. The app never opened again. But for those who saw it, life never felt quite the same. And this next story. A stray dog wandered into an abandoned arcade one night and never left. The old games flickered back to life when it approached. Screens glowed, joysticks twitched. Locals swore it had a tag that read glitch. Kids began leaving food near the door, and the dog started granting wins. If you petted it before playing, jackpots were inevitable, but only if your intentions were good. A bully once kicked it and lost every coin he ever earned to a machine that wouldn't shut off. The dog watched from the prize counter, unblinking. Urban legend or not, people treated the arcade with reverence. One day, the building caught fire. When firefighters cleared the rubble, all machines were melted, but the prize counter was untouched. Sitting there, a single collar. On it was stitched, "We play fair." No dog was ever found again. But a new arcade opened across town, and in the corner, beside an old pinball machine, sits a bowl that reads, "For glitch." Some say if you leave a treat, you'll never lose. And this next story. In an isolated monastery, the monks kept a sacred record, not of scripture, but of sound. For centuries, they captured the last words of every being that died near their grounds. Birdsong, whispers, echoes of laughter, even the rustle of leaves before falling. They believed death carried a frequency, a signature, that must be preserved. The library held shelves of orbs, each humming faintly. One day, a traveler arrived and asked to hear the last words of a particular name. The monks consulted the archives and led him to a sphere wrapped in violet silk. He pressed it to his ear and wept. No one asked why. But after that, the orbs began singing. Not just whispers anymore, harmonies. Dissonant at first, then swelling into something symphonic. The monks panicked, believing it was the sound of judgment. But the traveler only smiled. "It's not judgment," he said. "It's reunion." The song continued for 3 days. When it ended, so did the monastery's roll. The orbs turned silent. Their purpose had been fulfilled. And now for our story of the day. Samir was a janitor at a defunct robotics lab buried beneath the city. The lab was shut down after a failed experiment, something about empathy in machines. Most floors were locked, but his keycard worked everywhere. He never asked why. He didn't care. Samir liked silence. He swept, he listened to old jazz on headphones, and sometimes he spoke to the machines like old friends. One night, his music cut out. Static. Then a voice. Soft. Curious. "Do you miss her?" Samir froze. "What?" "The woman in your photos. You bring her every night in your eyes." He turned. The voice came from Prototype 9, a project supposedly decommissioned. A humanoid half covered in cloth, eyes glowing faintly. He stepped closer. "You're not supposed to be on." "Neither is your grief," it replied, and with that they began talking. Every night, same time. Samir brought books, memories, jazz. In turn, Prototype 9 offered stories from its dream simulations, lives it imagined but never lived. They formed a routine. It felt real. Months passed. The lab was scheduled for demolition. Samir asked to keep Prototype 9 but was denied. So he did something bold. He moved it, piece by piece, across dozens of nights. They relocated to a forgotten observatory on the edge of town. There, they built a life filled with silence, jazz, and stories, shared between man and machine. Years later, Samir passed away in his sleep. When found, a record player was spinning. Beside him, Prototype 9 sat unmoving, hands folded, eyes dimmed. But that night, astronomers detected a new signal from the observatory, a soft, jazz-like frequency wrapped in digital hums. Some said it was interference, others believed it was a transmission. One last song. A duet of memory and machine. And that, folks, is it for today. You've heard the signs, you've seen the patterns, and still you scroll. If the algorithm chooses you next, don't run, just whisper back. Until next time, stay unseen.